the basis of it. And it makes good logical sense to me. But as I look at what's happening now with Muslims and Christians and Jews at each other's throat and about to engage, I think, in a major problem and battle coming up, if there was ever a time that that whole concept of tolerance and diversity, and this nation embodies that concept more than any other nation on the face of the earth. Now, where did this nation get it? I'll tell you flat out, there's no question in my mind, it came out of this fraternity, because you cannot separate the history of America from the history of Freemasonry in America. They are one and the same, and let me just point that out to you. And by the way, it happens internationally. There have been in my opinion, six great true revolutions in the 17th and 18th century. What do I mean by a great and true revolution? A revolution that was not aimed at taking power. It was a revolution aimed at giving power to the people. And there were only 6 of those. One was obviously here in America. One was in France. One was in Italy. One was in Hungary. One was in South America. And one was in Mexico. Now, who were the leaders of those 6 great revolutions that brought power to the common people? Obviously, George Washington in this one. And in France, it was Danton. In Italy, it was Garibaldi. And in South America, it was Simón Bolívar. Mexico, Benito Juárez. And in Hungary, Kossuth. All of those men, Freemasons, all of them. Is that just chance? Is that just the luck of the dice? I don't think so. In fact, I'm wondering if all of our history can even be looked on as chance or luck. I look at, we had a Scottish Rite dedication in this very hall. Now, I remember sitting back up there in the balcony, and I was sitting with Tom Ament, who was then our county executive before he got pensioned off pretty well. And but sitting up here, where these men are sitting, was the head of the Prince Hall Lodge, the black Masonic lodges, was the head of the Grand Lodge here of Masons in Wisconsin. The Lord's Prayer was sung by the cantor from Temple Emmanuel, and the prayer, opening invocation, was done by the dean of the Roman Catholic Cathedral over here. And I looked at all of that, and I said to Tom, I said, do you realize what you're looking at could not have occurred even in this city just 20 years ago? That you see this gathering of people of different faiths, different religions, different races and ethnicities, and yet they're able to gather on a common basis. That's a historic event. You and I take those things for granted. I'll tell you the rest of the world doesn't, but they're starting to pay attention. When you had the great head of our military, Powell, now Secretary of State, but when he was in command of the most powerful military force on the face of the earth as a general, and he turned over the baton of power to George Shalikashvili, the next chief of staff. You paid no attention to that at all, but do you think the rest of the world didn't notice that it was a black man passing the power peacefully to a man who had a Georgian, German, Polish accent named Shalikashvili? That can only happen here, but it's got to begin to happen elsewhere and throughout the world. In fact, the problems that we're seeing now, especially the so-called anti-Americanism, and much of it being fomented, but it's for good reason. America is no longer a place. In my opinion, America has become an idea, and the idea came from the craft of Freemasonry. And that idea is what's moving across the face of the globe, and if you're in power, those ideas are dangerous. And I can understand the Middle Eastern people, the ideas that are being presented in this country, saying, look what happens when you let the common people move and control the government. They don't want any part of that, because then they have to give up the levers of power. And this is going to take a struggle. There is no question about it. But it's starting to move worldwide, and something that happened here. When I look at the key question for me, is this all chance, or was it written on the trestle board? Did the Supreme Architect lay out the plans for the building, first of all, of this country to become the tool to bring freedom, tolerance, and love and peaceful connection to the rest of the world. History documents, frankly, are limited in this fraternity because, as I said, it was all by oral tradition. We don't have many of the things